Jó reggelt! This is my first time in Hungary, so I feel very privileged to be here with you today. It's an honor. I like your country already. It's been 48 hours since I arrived. But I wanted to introduce a little bit about Honsha.ORG is an alumni association of former Toyota people. And it's .org because 100% of our proceeds, they come from our proceeds from the sale of our book, Toyota by Toyota, is destined to helping some social causes, some of them in Africa and some other countries, as you will see. I come from San Diego, California. San Diego is very close to the border with Mexico. And California, as you can see, it's such a big country. It's about 5 times larger than Hungary. And I'll introduce you to another country. You probably think, well, my Japanese, yes, my grandparents are Japanese. So let me tell you a little bit about Japan, because we will share some stories about Toyota and about Japan. And Japan is an island, as you know, surrounded by water. And it's much larger than Hungary. But what calls our attention is that not only is that island larger, but take a look at the proportion of the population in that island. It's much bigger than the population or the density here in Hungary, or even in California, for that matter. Now you can imagine so many people living in that island with some scarce resources. And there's a reason why the bathrooms are so small. Bathrooms are actually small to a point they cannot have a sink. The sink is right behind the toilet bowl. And I thought, well, this is because the country is so small. It's an island. They don't have a lot of resources. But you know, my grandmother said, well, that's one problem. But the real reason why the toilet has a sink behind the tank is because before you fill that tank with water, it gives you the chance of saving water you can wash your hands right there. When you flush, you wash your hands. You don't have to go and flush and then go and wash your hands in another sink. So you save about a liter, maybe. And Japan was very poor. 50, 60 years ago, it was the 30th largest economy in the world. They didn't have a lot of resources. They were very poor. But even if you go there more recent, like in 1996, you will see that the toilets are still with that little sink behind the toilet. Now, fast forward even further, and I'm talking about 2 years ago, I took this picture in Japan. And they're still selling toilet tanks with the sink attached to it. They are still saving that 1 liter of water by washing their hands over there. And maybe we are all thinking, well, let me read here. Do they still need to save? No, they are very rich. They are so rich that some toilet seats, they cost over 1,000 euros. And they are all electronic, digital. They can do everything you can imagine. And a few things you cannot imagine. I will not get into those things. But now it's Panasonic making those toilet seats. It's Toshiba. It's Mitsubishi. They make computers, high-tech TVs, and toilet seats. Can you believe that? 1,000 euros for a toilet seat. They are very rich. So do they still need to save? And that's going to be the entire question of today. Is that the right way of thinking? Why are they doing that? Now, if we're still thinking, why does the third largest economy in the world thinking about saving 1 liter of water? Now it's time for us to changed the way we think. And the way is now, why should anyone waste an extra liter of water? It's not why do they need to save if they are too rich. It's why do they need to waste, regardless of how rich they are. And that's the difficult transition. How can we change the paradigm? If you can answer that question, you can probably answer this question. Why is that lean fails so often, so frequently? Top 10 reasons why lean fails. Lean manufacturing fails all the time. Why lean programs fail while Toyota succeeds? Lean Institute in the United States already published a great article explaining that lean is failing because of us, because of people. There was one article on the Industry Week that was showing that lean is all about people. If it fails, it's because of us. We didn't focus on people. We were focusing on tools. And the same way, that's how lean succeeds, when we focus on people and not on tools. And the article even says, for lean to be successful, leaders must entirely change the culture of their business. What is culture? Culture is those shared habits, shared values. And if we need to change that, what can we do to change that? Now, about 50 years ago, here is a poster that Toyota was posting in all public areas. We are talking about parking lots, cafeterias, training rooms, elevators. And they were showing there that before I had to type 6 digits. After my Kaizen, I found a way to type only 4 digits and get the same results. The effects of my Kaizen is that I eliminated 3 types of waste. Waste of processing, waste of correction, and waste of motion. Out of the 7 wastes, I reduced 3 of them. Maybe I have reduced only 1 second. And now we are talking about a company that is $30 billion in annual sales. 50 years ago, Toyota was small, $30 billion annually. And they were looking at 1 second and saying, we need to eliminate this 1 second. It's too much. 2 digits, 1 second, let's eliminate it. Do they really need to eliminate that? And maybe the question is not why would they need to save, but why should any company need to waste an extra second? Are you up for this challenge of changing the way people think? We need to change the way they think by doing some different method that we are doing today. Though just a month ago, we brought a group to Japan. So we bring people to Japan every year, 2 or 3 times, and we visit Toyota. We stay in Toyota City, in the Toyota Castle, and then we take them to talk to the senseis. And in this case here, it was Ishigaki-san. He was showing this envelope, and he spent time and time explaining Toyota doesn't buy envelopes for internal mail. What they do is they get envelopes from suppliers, all the correspondence from suppliers. And they use those envelopes to do internal mailing. So he was showing that this year Toyota still does it, and they are still doing it today, 2018. But wait a minute. In 2018, actually, Toyota is a $300 billion this year. $300 billion company. Do they really need to save? It's a 1 cent per envelope. A $300 billion company doesn't need to save 1 cent. A lot of people think, why is that Toyota doesn't just buy those envelopes? But the real question, what we need to change our thinking to, is why should any company need to waste an extra cent, an extra envelope? It doesn't matter if you're a $300 billion company, or if you're just a $30 million company, or a $3 million company. It doesn't matter. Do you need to waste an extra 1 cent? That's the way we need to change the thinking. But how leaders can make people change the way they think? Harvard Medical School did a research, and they found out that one of the ways you change the way people think is by repetition, making people repeat, and repeat. Now, Bruce Lee, have you guys heard of Bruce Lee here? Yes, that very famous Chinese philosopher, and also martial arts. He said, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who practiced one kick 10,000 times. Because that person who practiced 10,000 times will do it consistently. But you need to do that 10,000 times to do it consistently. What? 10,000 times? That's too much. That's a lot. People say in America, practice makes perfect. But actually, practice doesn't make perfect. It makes permanent. So the more you repeat, the better you become in repeating that. Being it good or bad, you're going to become better and better at repeating that. Do you have any problem that you have today that you already tried to solve last year, 2 years ago, and you're still trying to solve? Maybe you're still trying to solve problems today that you had before because you got very good in trying to solve, but not in solving it. Maybe our practice is not making it perfect, it's just making it permanent. And this is happening more and more often. Now, one thing that's gaining a lot of attention lately is the kata, the habit, the routine. Anybody has martial arts background here? Kung Fu and karate? Oh, a few people. So you already know that kata. So I want to introduce you my kids. My kids, I have twin boys. They fight all the time. So we enroll them in the karate class so they can learn how to defend from each other. So if they fight, now this is many years ago, the first thing that they learned when they go to karate school is how to make the movements in the right way, in the right sequence, in the right speed, so you can defend yourself from your opponents. What's the muscle you have to use? What is the angle you need to use so if the opponent hits you, your head is protected? Things like that. How to do your steps so you don't lose balance. And you have to do it repeatedly, so it becomes almost instinctive. Now, kata, it came from, according to studies, it's a detailed choreographed pattern of movements. Because you do it so frequently, it's just second nature. It's just instinctive. But it came from Japan, from Okinawa, an island in Japan. And it was a method for survival. So people could defend themselves from attackers, but also they could hunt and get some food. So as soon as they saw an animal, they could immediately go and attack the animal and eat the animal. So father knew how to do it, so he started choreographing that, documenting that, and giving it to the son, to the grandson, so everybody would survive. But that was in the 11th century. Today, kata is being used in many, many other places, in the arts, martial arts including. But today, it's being used even in the science and engineering and aerospace projects. And as you can see, lean initiatives. In lean initiatives, yes, you will see several books about Toyota Kata, how they do it there, what kind of habits, routines that they have there that makes Toyota so great, the most studied company in the world. And in those books, you can find things such as, these are the habits that a leader should have so they can coach people in several areas, maybe process improvement, maybe problem resolution, maybe coaching people for development, setting targets, project management. There is a routine for every single thing over there. And that's one thing that all the books written until today didn't have. They had the tools. They had some cultural things, but they didn't say exactly how do you do this consistently. Now, in this Forbes magazine, they had a great article, Why Lean Programs Fail Where Toyota Succeeds. And maybe if you already read some of the Toyota Kata book, one of them has this little card that shows exactly what kind of questions, how your reaction should be when you have some opportunity to coach somebody. For example, you see that and you say, hey, what is the target condition? What is the current condition? What are you doing to overcome the obstacles? When are you going to come back here and do another improvement? What is your method for coaching people? What is your method or your routine to solve problems? So if you learn how to ask those questions, make sure you ask that 10,000 times so it's internalized. Every time you see an opportunity to coach somebody, that's what you're going to go through. But since we are talking about coaching, what is coaching? Well, coaching means to develop, to mold, to give shape, to improve somebody. How can you do that? Because practice, as we saw, doesn't make perfect. Only perfect practice does. And here is one example. I wanted to leave you with this thought in your heads. I was visiting this company. It's not too far from where I live. It's close to Los Angeles in California. And the owner of this company, he is the son of the founder, the president. He was taking me to visit his pistachio growing and packing facility. And he said, Sammy, please come here, welcome, let's go. And he was walking towards a process. And I don't know if you can see well here, but there are some pistachios on the floor. And he saw the pistachios on the floor. He was just kicking them out of the way. Sometimes he was stepping on the pistachios, but he was just going from point A to point B. And I was just following him. And the plant everybody was doing the same thing. The plant was a little bit dirty and not well maintained. Everybody was disregarding the product, the very product that was bringing food to their table, that was bringing education, that was bringing health care, was bringing money, survival for their family. They were stepping on the pistachios. I can't imagine if I was still working for Toyota. I worked in Toyota in several countries for many years. I can't imagine if there was a Corolla in front of me, if I just kick it out of the way, I think my boss would fire me. He'd say, hey, you don't kick. Oh, but wait a minute. You're comparing a car with a pistachio? With one nut? Well, that's not a fair comparison. Because that one thing is probably just cents. And now you're talking about a car. You don't kick a car. Well, maybe the price of 1 kilo of pistachio is more expensive than the price of 1 kilo of Corolla. Who knows? It's not the price. It's that example. It's that coaching possibility they just missed. Now, I wanted to introduce you to this other place here. It's one of the largest, it's a plant from the largest candy maker in the world. And I was in their plant in the Czech Republic. Excellent plant, beautiful, pristine, very shiny floor. And the general manager took me on a tour and he said, Sammy, I wanted to show you my facility. Come here. But all of a sudden he saw that. And he bent over and he grabbed that and said, well, hey, Joe, come here. Joe, what's happening here? I see a lot of candies here. And then Joe came, and he was a machine operator. And he said, hey, boss, I think it's falling off of the conveyor belt. And the general manager said, oh, yes, I can see, but why? And Joe said, oh, let me see. Oh, yes, there is a little diverter here, and it's kind of out of place. And the general manager went there and said, oh, yes, that's true, the diverter. But why? And Joe said, oh, I think it's because of this screw. You know, the screw is a little bit loose. The boss said, yes, it's right. It's loose. Why? And Joe said, oh, let me see. You know, it's probably because of this gasket, this rubber gasket. Oh, yes, it's cracked. And the boss said, let me see. Yeah, it's cracked. But why? And Joe said, oh, you know why? I think they forgot to put Vaseline when they washed the equipment. And now it's kind of cracked. And then the boss said, oh, that's why they forgot. Huh? What do you think we should do? And Joe immediately said, oh, I think I'm going to add this to the checklist, to the preventative maintenance list. So whenever they wash it, they know they need to protect those gaskets with Vaseline. And I'm going to put this here and also make a copy of this checklist and distribute to all the other processes. Not only that, I'm going to send this to the other plants that use the same type of conveyor belt. So what I was experiencing at that time was a coaching opportunity that the general manager didn't miss. He used that to coach that one person, to develop that one person. So chances are when that same general manager is back on that same floor, Joe would just tap him on the back and say, hey, boss, look at what I did. Are you proud of myself? What do you think I should do next? And we'll be already turned on into how can I improve better and better? So we just saw two different scenarios here. One where the coaching kata happened immediately, and the other one, the GM just lost that opportunity. That's a shame, but it's happening every single time. So what I wanted to encourage all of us to do is, whenever you get back to work, maybe it is tomorrow, that the first thing when you see a coaching opportunity, that you already start asking, what's happening now? What should be happening? Why is that it's not happening? What do we need to do, and what kind of scientific method should I use so I can get to that one level? But most important of it, if you want this to become a reality in your organization, you must practice. You must repeat that 10,000 times. That's my message I wanted to share with you today. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
És akkor itt van az a bizonyos 10 perc, ami jut kérdésekre. Remélem, hogy elindult már az útjára a dobálós mikrofon is, ott közeledik hátulról. Meg természetesen itt van a kezemben a Slido is, de mielőtt a mikrofon gazdát talál, let me ask you a personal question. I just felt curious. What do you think are your best personal habits or most useful?
My best personal habit, I think it's taking shower every day. No, but
You think that's not a widespread custom?
No, but I enjoy sharing the knowledge. You know, I do that on a weekly basis. I teach for San Diego State University, so I really like sharing what I learned.
Well, there is a bit of information that you can share with us. Someone would like to know which one is the best Toyota plant, as you have worked for several of them. You must know.
You know, just last year I went to the Kyushu. They call it the Lexus plant, in Kyushu, in the island, southern part in Japan. And I thought that was a great plant. People work in such a great harmony. But one thing you always see in any Toyota plant is the bells and signs are going off all the time, signalizing there are some problems. So maybe the best Toyota plant is the one that makes problems visible very quickly.
Thank you very much. És azt hiszem, van gazdája a mikrofonnak. Nem, ezt rosszul gondoltam. Nincs magdája. Van gazdája a mikrofonnak? Akkor kérdezem. Annyira megdicsértem mindenkit az elején, hogy itt szoktak lenni kérdések, azért nem kell áttérni a Slido-ra. Most a Slido-n jönnek mégis a kérdések. Next question through Slido. Is there a country where Toyota would never open a plant?
A culture, you mean?
Is there a country in the world where Toyota would never consider opening a plant?
Oh, that's a very tough question. I don't know if there are countries that the culture is very different from the Japanese culture. One example is Brazil. And Brazil has, Brazilians are very good at playing football, but they're not very disciplined. So the Japanese are very disciplined people. But one of the best Toyota plants I've ever visited is in Brazil, because they follow all these things that I shared with you today. So regardless of their culture, I think the company culture is so much stronger that it overcomes all those obstacles. Yeah.
Speaking of un-PC national stereotypes, what do you think would be the difference between a Japanese or specifically a Toyota car manufacturing plant and an Italian one?
Oh, I've never been to an Italian factory, but I understand that if there is a same Toyota plant in Japan or in Italy, they will be so similar.
No, I didn't mean the same Toyota plant. I meant an Italian.
Oh, yes. Then, I don't think I have a very educated opinion on that. But I know that in some countries in Europe here, Toyota is doing really well. If Italy is any different from the Czech Republic, for example, Toyota has a great presence in the Czech Republic with PSA as a joint venture. So I know it works really well here too.
Még mindig várjuk, hogy a mikrofon is gazdára találjon, de addig mondom tovább a kérdéseket Slido-ról. Shall lean culture necessarily start with the leader?
Well, sometimes you don't have leaders prepared or ready to lead a lean culture. And when you don't have that, it's not an excuse for us to just sit back and wait for a better leader or our leaders to change. Sometimes it starts in our department, and only after that, the leader is going to start paying attention to what is happening here. And then they're going to permeate that to other departments. So ideally, yes, but as ideal is not always the norm, sometimes we have to start wherever we are.
How do you see the responsibility of the owner of the business in the lean transformation?
Well, it's the same as the leader, because the owner of the business is the sponsor. If he's not engaged, it's going to be so much more difficult, but not impossible, for everybody to start implementing lean. But sometimes it starts in one department. Leadership is not caring too much about that department until they start seeing the benefits, and then they multiply that elsewhere.
How can I practice kata without a sensei? Someone's asking.
Well, that one is difficult. I think it's almost close to impossible, because it's very difficult for you to get into a habit if you don't have anything to enforce that habit. And sometimes you're running or swimming against the tide, and pretty soon you're just following the tide all over again. So not having a sensei makes things very close to impossible.
How can we avoid saving for saving's sake?
Well, Toyota today is considered not one of the largest car companies in the world, but it's considered one of the largest banks in the world that happens to make cars. A lot of people say, how come a car company has so much money in the bank? Well, the Kaizen mentality of people is, well, I'm just going to save, it's not that it's just for saving's sake, but they are just thinking, how can I do less? Do less 1 second, use 1 less liter of water, do 1 less digit in typing. And it's the job of a leader to just accumulate all those savings and transform that into companies' strategic advantage. Like, for example, one person can save a few minutes, the other a few minutes. If the leader cannot accumulate those few minutes until it becomes 1 full 8 hours, then they cannot, the payroll is going to still be the same, production is going to still be the same, but the time that they do not lay off people, but the time they don't need to hire more people than they need, that's when they start becoming very competitive.
So someone's asking, if you are given a manufacturing facility with below 50% output, how would you start?
Oh, that's a very difficult question, because we always start from what we call Genchi Genbutsu, meaning we have to first go there instead of prescribing, hey, here's the first thing you need to do. I believe that the first is you need to go and see. Without doing that, you cannot even take a risk of recommending what's the first, second, or third step. So in Toyota, they call this Genchi Genbutsu. Do not give people anything before you really understand the entire problem. And they say 80% of solving a problem is understanding it well.
So the excuse about lean often in Hungary is that it's very well that it might work in Japan, but we have a different culture. What's your answer to that?
You know what's the worst culture I've ever worked with is surfing instructors, surfers. So in California, they have a surf school, and the owner asked me to help save the school. And those the surfers, they don't like to follow any discipline or anything. And once I said, hey, let's do standardized work. We need to wear watches. They said, oh, we don't wear watches because it's going to scratch the board. Besides, we can tell exactly what time it is just by watching the sun. And I said, this is different. We need to know exactly what second each one of the sections of your class will take, so we can do standardized work. So, and that saved the company. They started doing it much better, which means, you know, even the worst type of culture, most undisciplined type of culture can do well with lean. So it cannot be an excuse for anybody anymore.
Well, thank you very much for that. Látom, hogy összegyűlt még egy csomó kérdés szlájdon, úgyhogy mi is tartogatjuk őket, hiszen lesz ma még egy pódiumbeszélgetés a nap végén. Ti is tartogassátok őket, és bíztatnék mindenkit, hogy nyugodtan tegyétek fel személyesen is a kérdéseket. Próbáltam az előbb mondani, hogy nem menekülő útvonalnak szánjuk a szlájdot, hanem egy kiegészítő lehetőségnek. Tehát ahogy eddig az elmúlt években ugye voltak sokan, akik szívesen kérdezték meg saját szavaikkal, saját maguk, ami érdekelte őket, semmiképpen nem erről akartunk lebeszélni titeket. Thank you very much. And we'll meet again at the end of today for a podium discussion. So I was just telling everybody that we've got lots of Slido questions. We'll be saving them until then.
Great, thank you. Thank you.